Welcome to the Money Mentors Podcast.
This podcast is for you. So if you have a retirement question you'd like us to address, reach out to us online anytime at matsonfinancial.com. Here's the thing. We do know we can plan for certain things next year thanks to some new guidance from the IRS when it comes to both our tax brackets and retirement account contribution limits. What do you think about the most recent changes they've announced here?
A couple of them don't really stick out too much to me. They've changed it a little bit. The 401k contribution limit, the max contribution went from $23,000 to $23,500. So nice little bump there. That's for your 401ks, 403bs, majority are your 457s and TSP plans, their savings plans. This one I think is interesting. So once you attain the age 50, you can do a catch-up contribution, which right now is $7,000. But if you are 60 up to 63 years old, I don't know why they picked that age range. It seems kind of interesting to me because if you're at that age, you might be closer to retirement, so it would have been more beneficial in your mid-50s. But either way, went from $7,000 to $11,250 for that catch-up contribution.
That's big.
Which means in total, then you would be able to put $34,750 into your 401k. If you're 60 to 63, at 64, too bad, so sad. You're
No
at
longer
7,500
eligible.
or 7,000, not eligible. So I would be curious. I'm going to call Mr. IRS and ask him why 60, 61, 62, and 63. The current tax rates are still the same, but those income limits do go up a little bit. The standard deduction does go up a little bit. So if you've already been doing things like Roth conversion planning, assuming your income is going to be about the same, there's a little additional room in your current tax bracket to do those other tax planning pieces like Roth conversions. So something we work on very heavily with our clients. But yeah, the super catch-up contribution is the one that really stuck out to me.
Real life lessons about your retirement. You're listening to the Money Mentors Podcast.
Let's say, Laurel Taylor, you've reached your retirement savings goals. You feel good about your numbers. Well, Yahoo Finance tells us, yes, you should take a moment, pop the cork on some champagne, and celebrate just a little bit. But then there are several more things you might want to do when you hit your goals. So I thought we'd talk about these two this weekend. A lot of our listeners kind of fall into this category where they've done the right things. But number one on their list, they say you might need to change your mindset when you hit your goals. What do you think they mean by that?
Yeah, I think that is one because you have to change the idea of if you think about a mountain, right? And you're going to retire, you're going up the mountain, you have time on your side, you're putting things away. This is your accumulation side. Well, once you hit retirement, now this other side of the mountain is your downhill.
Well, you forgot the peak, right? That's where you're popping the champagne.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. Pop the champagne, celebrate it great, have a sip there, and now you're on your way down.
Time to get down. It's cold up here.
And that just means the distribution side of it. And that means you're taking money from your accounts. You no longer have this every 2 weeks or so employer deposit into your bank account. So that is a mindset shift, right? It's just this factor of, hey, I don't have this steady income coming in from my employer, but instead now I am responsible for my income stream moving forward. And that's a scary thought. But we try to totally take away that fear and that emotional, the negative side of it, and show you exactly how it works, how this whole plan could be laid out, what that income looks like along the way. When does Social Security come into play? Do you have a pension in here? Do we have to take from investments? All of those little things along the way. What about required minimum distributions when you're 73? And those come into play. So this really helps you ease that mind and look at it and say okay, I can see my needs are met, my income goal is met. And at the end of this, when all's said and done, do I have money left over? And if I do, what do I want to do with those dollars? I've been a part of conversations where I remember the husband and wife looked at each other and like, oh boy, we love our kids, but that's a lot of money to be left there. We can spend more, right? And that gives them that peace of mind to like, okay, I can do these things we've talked about, those dreams, goals, and desires. And that's why it's so important to us, back in that last segment for Taylor to talk about getting to know you at that very first meeting, is because we can't create the plan without knowing you and your goals.
And that kind of points to the next two on their list here, coming up with that comprehensive withdrawal plan so you can get down that mountain safely. You know what you're comfortable spending along the way, what you can maybe give away to family, friends, if that's a priority for you, and diversifying those income streams. Now, after that on their list here, the 7 things that you can do once you reach your retirement savings goals is perhaps think about preparing for long-term care needs. This is one of those big unknowns. I don't care how much you've saved for retirement, right?
Correct. And statistically speaking, 1 in 2 people are going to have some sort of long-term care need. Now, one person might be an additional $2,000 a month. The other might be $20,000 a month, depending on that level of care, right? But that's the scary part about it, is the uncertainty. We don't know. You may never need it, but we kind of have to plan for it, right? Now, that does not mean that we should commit so much of our income and investments towards some really expensive long-term care policy that keeps going up in price year to year and it's now becoming unaffordable. That doesn't mean that at all. What it means is we need to look at overall in your entire comprehensive plan, your enhanced retirement plan that we're going to create for you, what are some other ways that we could accommodate higher withdrawal rates for particular years, assuming that we have a long-term care need. Maybe it's a fixed index annuity with a long-term care rider. Maybe it's a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. And if you never use the rider, great. And your family is going to receive that death benefit. There are so many tools in our tool belt that we can utilize to help take care of that. We're not going to be able to predict and alleviate all of that, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is keep your financial freedom in your hands. And so looking at all of those different tools and putting those pieces together so that if that situation should arise, we pull that tool out of the tool belt, great, we're taken care of. But if we don't plan for it, or we're stuck in something that's so inflexible, it really makes it difficult to accommodate a situation like long-term care planning.
Another thing on their list here, too, and again, something else we don't like to think about necessarily, but plan your estate. I mean, after all, if you've worked really hard to get to where you are, you want control over those decisions, right?
Yeah, and I think oftentimes people think estate and they think of 2 things, either the wealthy or this is what happens when I don't have my money anymore, right? Or when I'm no longer here. And yes, those things could be true, but also at the same time, estate is for anybody, right? If you're owning things, I remember an attorney told us in the very beginning when I started in this industry, they said, if you have kids, cash, or a clue, you need to have an estate plan.
Great.
Yeah.
And it's more than just a will. Now, that is okay for some people. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not recommending anything for you to do. But with a will, that means it's a public process because it's going to go through probate, and it could be costly and take a lot of time.
And not tax efficient.
Right. Also back to taxes. So let's instead maybe get more pointed with your plan. You know what those specifics are. You name beneficiaries on your IRAs, things like that. But also what happens to these different things. And also what happens to you if you're alive but not well.
You took that's where I was going next.
Oh, hey, there you go.
I'll elaborate. But
Go ahead. Go for it.
No, so I've met with a couple clients, dozens of clients, and they say, our afterlife things are pretty straightforward. We've got 2 kids, everything's split up 50-50. All of that can be taken care of with beneficiary designations. You're absolutely correct. But what if, John, when you drive out of here, you get into a terrible car accident and you're incapacitated and you don't have financial power of attorney documents or medical power of attorney documents or healthcare patient advocate? Who is going to make those decisions, right? So when we think of estate, we typically think immediately of trust and will and, creating this big estate for our kids to be trust fund babies and yada, yada. It's not just that. It's about protecting you more so, I would argue more so while you're alive and not well. And that doesn't mean that, sure, you may not need that full-blown trust. A will may be just fine. A ladybird deed for the house may be just fine. But you don't want to be in that position where you're incapacitated and your spouse is trying to take care of you and you don't have those power of attorney documents, both financial and medical. And who are the people that you really trust? Or maybe you have them and those people that you really trust are no longer around, right? Or not in the picture and they need to be updated, right? So it's just like your retirement plan. It's a living, breathing document. We're really never done with it, but it's better to plan ahead of time than after a tragedy happens. We're already in an emotional state of mind there. We want to have everything spelled out. This is what my wishes are, and this is how I want to be taken care of. And I know that you, Laurel, are going to be a good steward of that and take care of me.
Want weekly lessons from your money mentors? Yes. Hit the subscribe button now and listen every weekend on Wood Radio.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Fee-based financial planning and investment services are offered by Matson Financial Services, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance products and services offered through Lakeview Financial Group, LLC, Matson Financial Services, LLC, and Lakeview Financial Group are affiliated. To find out if Matson Financial Services is licensed in your state, please call 800-536-8907.